I realized the other day that I was at this concert, the Fillmore East.
With Arthur Brown and the fire on his head?
Yeah. I remember they brought him out in a litter with fire coming out of his head.
What is this?
He was the opening act, and he had a one-hit. He was a one-hit wonder. I can't sing it all. Fire, da, 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 fire.
Concert, yeah. He said he was at the concert.
But you'll have people on your tours who are going to want to say that. Like I think that's like people like, hey, I remember that one.
Funny stories to tell on your tour. This is a remnant. Jimi Hendrix, when he Hendrix, by popular consensus, was the best musician to come out of the whole rock movement. A brilliant, brilliant guitarist. The people still are catching up to what he was doing. But in order to make a name for himself, he acted crazy when he first started. And one of the things he used to do was set his guitar on fire, smash his guitar like the Who. But our society is so strange. This is one of the pieces of one of the guitars that he smashed, and it's like a relic from Jesus. This was in the show in LA. It belongs to the Experience Music Project in Seattle. They wanted to photograph it, so they brought it from LA to Seattle, photographed it, and sent it down here to us with a courier accompanying it. So this piece of crap it has been imbued with religious meaning.
Rennie, how much did it sell for, though? How much do you think it's worth?
I have no idea.
More than Liberace's piano.
Yeah, it says Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, wow.
Where?
So Crosby, Stills, Nash, and then we're done with the 60s. Sorry.
Are we allowed to photograph?
Yeah. No flash.
Everyone heard photos? Okay, no flash.
You mean on the tours too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, any visitor can take photos, just no flash.
Rennie, for touring purposes, would you suggest actually coming, then going back around and then through this way?
You can't
Well,
go
the show's
through.
meant to be seen
So we
in chronological
go,
order.
so we
yeah.
come back through here and then go up.
So the 70s, you know, when the optimism and hope started to fade because of drugs and violence, but still some amazing things. This is my favorite, or I think the most beautiful image in the show. It's Bruce Springsteen as a very young man, and there's this sad hand reaching out to him from the darkness. And this is the Sex Pistols, who were, you know, the anarchist, punk, the whole alternative to everything we've seen so far. Punks had no use for hippie love. They were angry British kids, and the Sex Pistols were the apotheosis of that. You know, their big song was "God Save the Queen, She Ain't a Human Being," and they were like a comet in the night. They lasted 1 year and made real change. Started a whole movement. Were part of this scary 70s. What's the date on that? 78. Yeah.
This was their last show, along with Lenny, Bruce, Sex Pistols. There was a few, I have it written down, but they did their last shows with Bill Graham.
You know, the arts in general, if you look at art history,
Groucho Marx, no, I was writing.
the arts always have a pendulum motion. Ornate, precious sweet. It's always balanced by a reaction, and you get the opposite. It's always a pendulum back and forth, and the music of Bill Graham was one end, and punk was the other.
I have a question, just because God Save the Queen came up. There's a connection between the early, Europe and early childhood and then the trip to America. Is there a narrative through line about rock and roll from Europe and rock and roll here, since we have that cross-continental move at the beginning of the exhibit?
It's an interesting question. I haven't thought about it. You know, the whole San Francisco scene was really because of the Beatles, the English invasion it was called, right? Where most rock and roll pre-Beatles was one artist, not groups. Certainly if there was a group like the Four Seasons, they weren't playing their own instruments, and they didn't write their own material. So the big change that came from the Beatles and all the groups like the Stones that came with them was that they wrote their own material, and they were a coherent group that played their own music, as opposed to 50s people like Elvis Presley and all those people who just bought songs from Tin Pan Alley or the Brill Building.
Eric Clapton also tells a nice story about how Bill Graham, because in England it was very, tight and formal, and in San Francisco it wasn't really allowed that experiment to happen, and he feels like he would have never been like Cream or Eric Clapton had he not had that phase of experimentation at the ballrooms.
So there's two really great items that you might want to stop at in here. This is a letter to Bill Graham from the Colonel, Elvis Presley's manager, congratulating him. And Bill was very happy to do this tour with Bob Dylan, and it's a telegram by Bill saying how pleased he was with that. My hero, Bob Dylan.
No problem.
Yeah, this was a very theatrical tour. I think they called it Rolling Thunder, but it's Bob Dylan in whiteface and Joan Baez when they were a couple.
Then we've got the butterfly wings up above.
So, highlights for me. This is a movie by Scorsese that documents the last concert by the band, which many of us think was the best band of the era, best band ever. And he documented their last concert. And every hero of 60s rock and roll is there. There's Van Morrison, Bob Dylan wearing a Janine haircut. And Robbie Robertson, lead guitarist of the band. And they're singing this very sweet Bob Dylan song, I Shall Be Released. So Neil Young,
The last one said in 78.
this is Ringo Starr was the drummer. And it's an amazing group of people. Ronnie Wood is playing guitar from the Rolling Stones. There's Janine again.
Oh, it's you.
I don't even know what kind of comment to make back. I'm like, I wish
Make fun
you
of
should
my
hear
hair.
my harmonica. I don't know.
A lot of people do with curly hair.
This is hilarious. This is a collection of letters that either Bob Dylan or Bonnie kept begging for tickets to the last concert at Fillmore West. There's dozens of them.
Are the no
Winterland.
markings from them saying no, they're not going to give them tickets?
Well, there is a response. This is a response saying, I know how much you want it, but you just don't have any more tickets.
Well, he didn't write it. It says Bill Graham
His assistant.
received and
Yeah.
read your letter.
So the rest of this wall is about every New Year's Eve, Bill, for years, Bill liked to have a big party, and he'd dress up in a different character. And this is one of the costumes that he wore as a butterfly, and he was on that green thing was attached to him, and he was hung by cable from the ceiling, and he would come down. So they were very, yeah, because it was done with the Grateful Dead. And around the corner, we should go look, is one where he dressed up as Father Time.
And this still gets worn at the New Year shows, the dead New Year shows. Someone will still wear it. John Mayer wore it this year.
I didn't know that.
Not that aspiring yet. She goes.
So then, as we move into the end of the 70s, you can see things are getting bigger and bigger. And I think my theory is that Bill was starting to get turned off by the scale and the money and the egos that were involved. And he starts to pull back and start to do more charity work. Completely obscene picture of Mick Jagger. But you see here, the Day at the Green filling up the Oakland Coliseum, 50,000 kids. It's a different scale. And then we move into the 80s.
This cartoon is really funny. Did you see that one?
I read this one.
This one is really funny.
Yeah, I mean, what she was saying is Ralph Gleason was one of the most prestigious jazz groups in the country, and he got on board.
These two.
So this is where he starts doing benefit concerts. Look at the number of people.
Where is that?
It's Live Aid in England, I think, London. This is an interesting letter to Bill Graham from Jack Nicholson thanking Bill for a backstage pass. Said it was the best experience of my life. This is kind of an amazing picture compared to the pictures, the black and white pictures that were kind of rough. This is very, very slick. And again, you see this later. It's Tina Turner, Mick Jagger, Madonna, Bob Dylan, again, Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones. These guys aren't quite in that class. It's Hall & Oates. And Keith Richards.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Looking a little healthy.
Very old days.
If you come in here, I want to point out, this continues to be benefits that he did, which of course we think of as tzedakah, right? This was the Jewish heritage coming out of doing good with the power that he had. But I want to point out the windows that we had to black out the windows so we could put artwork in here. You can't have direct sunlight on art. And so we came up with this idea of lyrics from key songs from this era. So if you pass by outside, you'll see there's Santana and Buffalo Springfield and et cetera, et cetera. And the first one here is from the Grateful Dead, Casey Jones, and it says, "Trouble ahead, trouble behind." And somebody said, that's the most Jewish.
That's all right.
So, let's go into the 80s.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, it's this.